I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now and breathe, because what I am about to say is not just a story, it is not entertainment. It is not background sound. It is something that grips your chest and refuses to let go. This is not fiction to the soul that feels it. This is a confession wrapped in whispers, a crime soaked in silence, and a truth buried so deep inside a heart that even the mirrors in the room refuse to reflect it. The room around you does not look dangerous, but danger has never needed shadows. It hides inside memories, inside the words that were never spoken, and inside the wounds that never bled, yet they hurt more than any scar could. The air right now feels normal, but if you listen long enough, it feels like it remembers something. It remembers footsteps. It remembers breathing. It remembers someone standing exactly where you are, or maybe exactly where I was. That night was quiet too. That room was ordinary too, just like yours, until it wasn't. There was no thunder outside, no screaming sirens, no dramatic music, no warning. Sometimes the most terrifying nights walk in gently like a trusted friend, and then they never leave. And neither do you. Not completely anyway. That night did not begin with fear. It began with familiarity, the kind that makes you relax, the kind that lowers your guard, the kind that whispers you are safe when safety was never in the room to begin with. And I remember sitting there thinking about nothing special, breathing normally just like you are doing right now, before everything in my life shifted without asking permission. Have you ever felt watched, even when nobody is there? Not the playful kind, the kind that presses against your spine, the kind that does not blink, the kind that feels patient. That night had eyes. The walls had ears. The air had weight. My heartbeat was loud. Not because I was scared, because something inside me already knew before I did. Something inside me whispered leave, but my body stayed like it belonged there. Like it was trapped in a story already written long before I arrived. He walked in, calm. Calm is the most frightening thing humanity can wear, because danger does not always roar. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it speaks softly. Sometimes it pretends to care. He knew me. My guard trusted him. My soul did not. My instincts screamed. I ignored them. That was my first mistake, and the last time my life felt ordinary. His voice was steady, not angry, not loud, just steady. It wrapped around the room, like smoke creeping into lungs. It didn't attack, it occupied. He said things I cannot erase. He asked questions I still answer in my dreams. He moved closer, not with force, but with certainty. And certainty is deadly when it belongs to someone who has no right to own your space. Every step he took erased a piece of who I thought I was, and by the time he stood close enough to steal the atmosphere, I did not even recognize myself. The world outside went on like nothing was happening. Birds slept. Lights glowed far away. People laughed in homes that did not belong to nightmares. But in that room, time broke. It bent. It twisted into something unrecognizable. No clock, no rescue, no miracle. Just presence. His presence. My silence. And a moment that would hunt the rest of my existence without mercy. People think crime is loud, that it explodes into life with violence, ripping reality apart. But sometimes crime is quiet. It sounds like controlled breathing. It sounds like someone whispering it's okay when it is not. It sounds like surrender disguised as calm. Sometimes it happens without screaming, without witnesses, without evidence. Just a memory etched into skin and bone. A memory you cannot prove. A story no one believes. A truth you cannot escape. He did not rush. He did not panic. He did not doubt. He knew exactly what he was doing. And there is something deeply horrifying about someone who hurts with confidence. He looked at me like I was not human, like I was not a soul. I was an object, a scene, a moment, a possession. He did not see fear. He saw control. He saw silence. He saw victory before the battle even began. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. I was alone, not lonely alone. The kind of alone that eats the inside of a person. The kind of alone that does not end when the moment ends, but follows you into daylight, sits beside you at breakfast, walks with you in crowds and whispers while you sleep. You move on, but it never moves away. It just becomes quieter, so quiet that everyone thinks you are fine. But you always know. That night did not just stay in the room. It traveled with me. It lives in breathing. It lives in blinking. It lives in closing my eyes. It lives in every place that should feel safe and doesn't. And maybe as you sit there now, your chest feels heavier for a reason. Maybe because somewhere deep down, you know rooms remember, people remember, the soul remembers. And sometimes the scariest crimes are not the ones committed with weapons, but the ones committed with presence, with power, with silence. And if you are still here, still reading, still breathing through every word, then maybe you already feel it, the shift, the unease, the invisible weight creeping through the space around you. Maybe your instincts are whispering the same thing mine once did. Something is not right. Something is watching. Something is not done. Part 2, I will continue exactly from this emotional point with more psychological tension, more cinematic narration, and a gripping deep crime soul experience without repetition. The silence after that night did not leave. It changed shape. It followed like a shadow that pretends to disappear in daylight, but stretches longer when the sun begins to fall. It became a companion. I never asked for a presence I could not outrun. Days turned into echoes. Nights turned into questions. The world expected me to behave like nothing had carved itself into my breathing. So I learned how to smile without meaning it. I learned how to talk without saying anything real. I learned how to continue existing while a part of me never left that room. There is a strange thing about trauma. It does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It waits. It lingers quietly in the background, like something unfinished. You walk through crowded streets, and suddenly the air feels too close. You sit among laughing voices, and your chest feels tight without explanation. You try to sleep, and the darkness feels crowded even when the room is empty. That is not imagination. That is memory refusing to die. That is fear, learning how to live inside you. People like to ask, "Are you okay?" They do not really want the truth. They want reassurance. They want comfort in believing the world is still safe. So you say yes, because it is easier than trying to explain a storm that no one else can see. But deep inside, there is a truth that claws at the ribs, a truth that says, safety is fragile, trust is fragile, life is fragile. Everything can shift in a single, quiet moment and never go back to what it used to be. I started noticing things I never cared about before. The way footsteps sound in an empty hallway, the way doors breathe slightly when closed, the way silence builds pressure inside a room. It was as if every space was watching, every shadow was listening, every quiet moment was capable of turning into danger. My heart did not beat calmly anymore. It waited as if expecting something to return, as if expecting him to return. And it was not just fear. It was anger too, not loud raging anger, but slow, burning anger. the kind that grows roots and wraps itself around every memory. He walked away untouched, while I was left carrying the weight of what happened. Like invisible chains, he took something he had no right to take and left me with a lifetime of echoes. The injustice of that sits heavy like stone. You try to breathe against it, but it never completely lifts. There were days when I felt strong, like maybe I was healing. Maybe I was finally reclaiming what was stolen. Then a sound, a smell, a phrase, a sudden stillness would drag me back without mercy. It was like the past refused to let go, dragging me through the same night over and over, not in reality, but in the mind, where it hurts even more, because there is no escape. You cannot leave your own head. You cannot run from your own chest. You are trapped with everything you remember, everything you felt, everything you never said. And there was always that unspoken question. Was it my fault? Could I have stopped it? Should I have seen it coming? That question is poison. It seeps in. It corrodes confidence. It rewrites identity until you start believing you deserved what happened, even when you did not. That is the cruelest part of silent crimes. They do not just hurt the body. They invade identity. They try to rewrite who you are from the inside out. The world around me kept moving faster while I remained stuck in invisible quicksand. Work continued. Conversations happened. Seasons changed. People laughed, loved, lived, while my life felt paused on a moment that refused to expire. I became good at pretending, good at functioning, good at appearing whole, while fragments rattled inside me like broken glass, held together by hope so thin it felt like it could tear any second. Then one evening, something happened. Not loud, not dramatic, just a moment. But sometimes, moments become turning points without announcing themselves. I was alone again. The same kind of quiet, the same still air, the kind that should feel peaceful, but instead feels aware. I sat there, staring into nothing, and I realized I was tired, tired of being afraid, tired of being hunted by a memory, tired of letting him still own space in my life long after he had left, tired of carrying someone else's darkness inside my chest. And that is when the shift began. Not sudden, not explosive, just a slow, deep awakening, the realization that survival is not weakness. Survival is power. That night did not prove I was fragile. It proved I was stronger than I ever understood. I was there. I endured. I am still here. That means I did not break completely. I bent. But I did not disappear. And that matters more than anything he did. But strength does not erase pain. Strength simply means you are still standing while it hurts. It means you keep breathing even when breathing feels heavy. It means you keep walking even when your feet tremble. That night may live in my story, but it does not get to define the final chapter. That realization did not heal everything, but it lit something like a spark in a long, dark tunnel. Not enough to end the darkness, but enough to see that maybe there is still a path forward, even if it is slow, even if it is messy, even if it is uncertain. Yet even as I began to stand again, something else lingered, because there was another truth I could not ignore. Sometimes what we survive does not just pass through us. Sometimes it leaves doors open. Doors we never meant to open. Doors that let danger return in new shapes. Sometimes the story is not finished. Sometimes the past is patient. Sometimes what you thought you escaped is still walking slowly behind you, waiting for the right moment to step back into your life. Because fear has a memory, but so does darkness. And darkness does not like losing control. And while I was learning to breathe again, something else was moving quietly. somewhere beyond sight, somewhere in the places where stories do not end. They just become quieter and wait. If you are still here breathing through this journey, holding the tension, letting the weight of every sentence sit on your heart, then stay, because the story is not done. The room is not finished. The past is not silent. And what began that night did not disappear. It simply shifted, waiting for the moment it would return, not as memory, but as reality once more. The quiet did not stay gentle for long. Something in the air began to shift. Like a room, remembering a nightmare it once survived. The same walls that had watched before seemed to lean in as if listening again. The same silence that once pretended to be harmless began to feel familiar. In the worst possible way, I could feel it long before anything happened. That strange, crawling sense that danger does not always return loudly. Sometimes it slips back into your world the same way it first arrived. Soft, calm, certain. It started with the feeling of being observed, not by the world, not by strangers, but by something I already knew, something that once stood too close, something that once breathed the same air, something that once turned safety into a wound. I tried to ignore it. I tried to call it imagination, leftover fear, old memory. But instincts never lie. They remembered his presence. They remembered the way it wrapped around a room like invisible smoke. They remembered before my mind allowed it to speak the truth. He was back, not seen, not heard, yet somehow here presence can return before footsteps do. It arrives in awareness. It speaks through silence. It trembles through the chest. I felt the atmosphere tighten, like the world itself was holding breath, and suddenly I knew that the story I thought I was slowly walking away from was not done with me. It had never really ended. It had only been waiting, watching, learning how to find me again. I told myself I would not be the same. This time, I was not that fragile soul anymore. I was not that silent shadow standing helpless in my own life anymore. I carried scars now, and scars are proof of survival, not weakness. I had learned to breathe through storms. I had learned to endure darkness. I had learned that fear only truly wins when you stop moving. But courage is not loud. Courage is the quiet decision to stand, even when your hands tremble. Still, the body remembers, the spine remembers, the heart remembers, the room remembers. The night began to feel too much like the one that came before. The air too still, the darkness too aware, the silence too crowded. I could almost sense him in it, calm, confident, dangerous, the kind of dangerous that does not need to rush because it believes it already owns the ending. And then came the sound. Not dramatic, not violent, just familiar. The kind of sound that does not belong yet fits too perfectly. The kind of sound that pulls memories out of hiding without knowing how I was standing. Heart pounding, not from panic, but from truth. Truth that this was happening again. Truth that I was not imagining this. Truth that the past had found a way to step back into the present. He entered not with chaos, but with the same terrifying calm, the same still gaze, the same unshaken certainty. But something was different. The room was not the only thing changed. I was too. There was strength hidden beneath the fear now. There was fire beneath the trembling. There was a voice inside me that refused to fall silent again. He spoke with that same controlled tone, like nothing was wrong, like everything belonged to him, like the night itself answered to his will. He carried himself with the confidence of someone who believed he would once again walk away untouched, while I would once again carry his darkness in silence. But he did not understand silence was gone. Silence had been burned out of me by everything I had endured. Silence had turned into resolve. I watched him as he moved closer, every step echoing the past, replaying moments etched into my bones. But this time, I was not frozen. I could feel fear, yes, but fear was not my master anymore. It was simply proof that I was still alive, still human, still fighting. My breathing was heavy but steady. My mind was loud but clear, and somewhere deep within, there was a voice that whispered, "You are not the same anymore." He reached for control the same way he once had, through presence, through power, through quiet intimidation. But when his eyes met mine, something shifted. Not outside, inside, the balance that once favored him began to tilt. He expected the old version of me, the one who surrendered in shock, the one crushed under silence, the one who could not find strength in terror. Instead, he found someone who remembered everything and yet refused to bow to it. Words rose, not loud, not shouted, just strong, clear, unshaken, the kind of strength that does not need to scream, the kind that comes from surviving storms no one else saw, the kind built from nights of pain that should have shattered but did not. I did not cry, I did not plead, I did not beg. I spoke with reality, with truth, with quiet, undeniable power. He had taken enough. He would take nothing else. For the first time, he was not calm. An emotion flickered in his expression, something he was not used to facing. Resistance, real resistance. Not fear disguised as bravery, but bravery born from scars. His control slipped. His presence did not dominate the room anymore. The atmosphere itself seemed to shift and choose sides. The silence no longer belonged to him. The air no longer bowed to him. The room no longer held his shadow. It held mine. He was not invincible. He never was. He only looked powerful, because I once believed I had none. But when a soul decides, it will not surrender anymore. Even the strongest predator loses certainty. He stepped back, not in fear, but in recognition. Recognition that the story he thought he owned no longer obeyed him. He could no longer break what had already learned how to rebuild itself. He could no longer steal from someone who had already claimed themselves back. He left not with victory, but with something unfamiliar to him: defeat. Not because I attacked, not because I shouted, not because I fought the way the world expects, but because I did not collapse, because I did not shrink, because I did not let his presence rewrite my identity again. He walked away, and this time the room did not feel haunted. It felt reclaimed. When the door closed, the silence did not suffocate. It breathed with me. For the first time in a long time, the quiet did not carry danger. It carried release. The walls did not echo fear. They echoed strength. The air did not weigh heavy. It felt lighter, not empty, just free. I sank down, not in weakness, but in relief. The kind of relief you feel when you finally realize the monster that once owned your life is no longer bigger than your will to live. Healing is not loud. It does not arrive like thunder. It arrives slowly through moments like this, through confrontations you never planned, through truth, finally finding a voice, through courage, quietly choosing to exist again. The night that once broke me became the night that proved I had never truly been broken. I had been wounded, yes, scarred, yes, changed forever, yes, but not destroyed, never destroyed. And somewhere out there, He walks in the world, believing he once held power over a life. But he did not. He only borrowed fear, and even that has now been taken back because fear loses strength when faced directly. Darkness loses authority when named. Silence loses control when broken. And I am no longer a silent witness inside my own story. I am the voice, I am the survivor. I am the one who walked through shadows and came out carrying fire instead of fractures. The room is quiet now, but it is not the same quiet as before. It is peaceful, not threatening, not waiting, not watching, just still. And in that stillness, there is strength, there is ownership, there is a life slowly ready to breathe again, a heart slowly ready to believe again, a soul slowly ready to live without the weight of a ghost that never deserved to stay. And if someone somewhere sitting alone reading this feels their chest tighten, feels their own memories whisper, then know this: you are not weak for shaking. You are not broken for bleeding inside. You are not ruined by what happened to you. You survived. And survival is the loudest victory, even when spoken softly, even when spoken only in breath, even when spoken only in the heart. The crime may have written itself into my story, but it did not write my ending. I did. And that is the truest power anyone can carry. The power to still be here. The power to still exist. The power to still rise after everything tries to bury you. The night ended. The fear loosened. The presence faded. And I remained stronger